FM, online, on your mobile and on digital radio. Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 6 o'clock, Liberal Democrat leader Nick Clegg says his party won't win an overall majority at the general election, but could keep a coalition partner in check. He set out manifesto plans for more education funding and a further £8 billion for the NHS. But Deputy Labour leader Harriet Harman has told Ian the Lib Dems should take more responsibility for their past mistakes.
The Lib Dems are the Tories' appendix. The truth is that there are all the problems that there are with the cost of living and pay stagnating and zero-hours contracts and worries about the NHS. The Lib Dems are every bit as responsible for that as the Tories are, because without the Lib Dems we wouldn't have been able to have the bedroom tax.
UKIP leader Nigel Farage has also announced his manifesto, telling LBC his plans would radically reduce the number of migrants coming to Britain. He also wants to protect defence spending.
We think defence does matter, and we will commit, again, fully costed, to spending the 2% that is required by NATO. We will spend 2% on our defence spending initially, but would look to increase it substantially after that.
A group of 5 men have been jailed for a total of 54 years for their part in killing a man and dumping his body parts in a lake in East London. Police say 39-year-old Neil Pickles suffered many injuries, including internal bleeding and multiple fractured bones. His remains were found over several days at a country park in Dagenham after the assault. 2 men and a woman have been found guilty of killing a professional gambler for his winnings at his home in Islington. 56-year-old Mehmet Hassan was tied up and kicked to death last March. Police say his death was callous and senseless. Mr Hassan's nephew, Hassan Gurney, spoke outside court this afternoon.
Mehmet was very generous and he would help his family and friends without question. He will be dearly missed by us all and he will never be forgotten. This just verdict provides an element of closure and relief that the callous perpetrators have been brought to justice and removed from our streets.
Police in Glasgow are searching a flat where missing student Karen Buckley was reportedly last seen. The 24-year-old vanished after a night out at the weekend. Her handbag was found in a park in the city yesterday. Former Sun editor Rebecca Brooks is in discussions about a new job at News Corporation. It's less than a year after she was cleared of phone hacking charges. London's recorded the hottest day of the year so far, 25 degrees in St James's Park in central London. Fire crews are warning people to take care if they're planning barbecues this evening. London Fire Brigade's Assistant Commissioner Peter Cowup has told LBC this advice.
Things like not using petrol to get the barbecue going. It's things like standing well back. It's things like keeping children away from the barbecue. And of course making sure it's on dry ground and not close to anything that would be flammable.
LBC weather dry but rather cloudy this evening for London and the southeast, lows of 9 degrees. Rather cloudy for central areas with some patchy rain possible. Patchy frost developing in northern England and a few showers across the north of Scotland and Wales. Tomorrow sunny, dry and warm with highs of 20 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Rosanne Wynne.
I'm Amy Solomon in the LBC Travel Centre. The M25 has one lane closed with an accident clockwise, so only 3 open between 16 at the M40 and 17 at Maple Cross. The queues are solid from 12 at the M3. In West London, temporary lights are up in Ealing, causing problems along the North Circular. Those delays stretch from Chiswick and Park Royal. It's also slow along Chiswick High Road and on the A4 from Hammersmith. And in Essex, there was an accident heading east earlier towards Southend on the A127. So there are queues from Romford near the M25 at junction 29 all the way along to Nevenden. In Surrey, the M3 remains closed southbound between Camberley and Farnborough. That's from 4 to 4A after a large fire earlier. It's solid from 3 at Bagshot on the approach with one lane closed northbound. And in Staffordshire on the southbound side of the M6, a lane still blocked at 12 for Gailey after an accident in the roadwork sections. That's causing delays of an hour from 14. Keeping you moving, your next travel updates in 15 minutes.
LBC Travel.
With Go-To Meeting. Work from home and avoid the tough commute.
118434. The handy number for handy numbers.
Calls cost 76 pence plus £1.53 per minute from a BT landline. Other networks vary and mobiles cost considerably more.
From north to south, the whole of a nation in the grip of the countdown, excited, impatient. Just skip to the shop or click on the screen and hold your breath till Wednesday evening. This Wednesday, it's a Lotto double rollover. Whatever your dream, Play makes it possible. Get your ticket now. Games rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
This is LBC, leading Britain's conversation. Call 0345 6060 973. Tweet at LBC. Text 84850. LBC's Election Call.
It is 5 minutes past 6. It's LBC's election call. If you go to the website lbc.co.uk, you can watch us for the next 30 minutes. As you know, every day during the campaign, we'll be giving you the chance to question a senior politician about what matters most to you. Across the week, we'll hear from all the main parties as Britain decides. And for the next 30 minutes, it's the turn of the Local Government and Community Secretary, Conservative Eric Pickles. He's here to take your calls 0345 6060 973. Well, Eric, very good evening to you. Where have you been today campaigning?
I have
Stirring up apathy, as Willie Whitelaw would say.
I have been doing that a little bit in my own patch, but yesterday I was right across the Midlands, came down to Milton Keynes, ended up in Bedfordshire. Could not have been happier.
And you like campaigning, don't you?
Yeah. I was like, we should do this all the time. You meet lots of interesting people and ask them how they're going to vote.
And that depends if they tell you the truth, I suppose. Shall we take the first call? Let's go to Jeff in Luton. Hi, Jeff. What would you like to ask Eric?
Hi, Ian. First time caller, long-time listener. A little bit nervous, so please forgive me if the starts writing checks the mouth can't cash.
OK, carry on.
You'll be all OK, Jeff.
I'm responding really primarily to a comment that was made about UKIP being racist.
I answered that.
No, not yourself, but I'm just bringing up a point that was made earlier.
Jeff, just before you go in, let me explain to Eric. We were talking about that in the last hour, that I don't know if you've seen this question from Christopher Hope at the UKIP press conference today, launching their manifesto.
Yeah, I did, yeah.
So it was all to do with that. Jeff, carry on.
Sorry, OK, so move on to the point. The main thing that gets me from a lot of the political parties, which is why I think a lot of people are having confidence in believing, is UKIP have actually put down on paper where they believe this money is coming from. Whether you like it or not, the maths add up, and as they've already said, it's been verified by an independent source. I haven't heard a political party that would make that claim. So if we are trading as we are with a massive debt, the only from someone who is potentially going to vote, and I've never voted before in my life, by the way, all I can see, other than UKIP, is political parties that are either going to raise my taxes after the event, or they're just going to get us in more debt.
OK, well, that's quite an interesting point, Jeff. So essentially what Jeff is saying is UKIP have launched their manifesto, they've costed everything, he's minded to go with them, but actually his mind is open. So you basically have a minute now to get his vote, Eric.
Well, basically what would be 5 years ago, this country was in a terrible mess. We've brought it back from the brink. We've brought down the deficit, we've increased productivity, and I beg your pardon, we've increased the number of people in employment because but we've created a job for 1,000 jobs for every day we've been in business. We've given opportunity to own their own house. We've revised the housing market, which was absolutely rock bottom. We've ensured that there are more good schools than they've ever been. We've ensured that there is security in retirement. We've increased the basic pension by just short of $1,000 a year. And, that kind of management doesn't grow on trees.
But a lot of people will... Conservatives will say, look, UKIP have actually put out a Conservative manifesto today. Why can't we have a Conservative manifesto from the Conservative Party?
Well, I haven't met any Conservatives that are saying that. We had a launch of our manifesto yesterday. It made some very clear promises. But I have to say, UKIP's it's essentially a one-trick pony. It basically wants to cut down on the degree of immigration. Sometimes it's a target, sometimes it's an aspiration, sometimes it's a cap. And in most policies with regard to UKIP, what you get is going to be something very different from what you get
of course,
tomorrow.
With the Conservatives on immigration, what was promised in the last manifesto has certainly not been delivered, has it?
It's certainly been delivered with regard to immigrants that have come from outside the EU.
That wasn't what was promised.
And the reason why the numbers have gone up is because, of course, we've created so many jobs. We're the only country in Europe that's actually enjoying big economic growth.
What about the point that Jeff was making, that UKIP have got an independent organisation to verify what they are going to spend and tax and all the rest of it, and yet your manifesto was absolutely littered with unverified promises. I mean, you make £8 billion on the health service, for example. Nobody has yet explained where this £8 billion is going to come from.
Just hold on a minute. I mean, the NHS lays down a very clear request in terms of what it needs to be funded, the so-called Stevens plan. Yeah, just bear in mind, we had a budget a few weeks ago where we put down £2 billion of that straight away.
This is another £6 billion.
But it's nothing compared to the amount of money that we've actually put into the NHS.
Where is it coming from, though?
Well, of course, we will deliver it in exactly the same way as we've delivered.
If the Labour Party was making this kind of promise, you would be at them like a rat up a trap. Up a drainpipe, maybe.
It's an interesting analogy.
No, but you know what I mean, because that's what you normally accuse them of.
Let's be clear. If we were in opposition, it might be fair enough, but we've been in government and we've delivered that. We have delivered year-on increases in the funding for the National Health Service. I beg your pardon. We've achieved more than that. If you look across the lifetime of this Parliament,
no, but this is $8 billion a year, isn't it?
No, this is $8 billion over the period.
Are you sure?
I'm pretty sure. I am pretty sure. I am pretty sure of that.
We'll look into that in the next few minutes. Yeah. I thought it was £8 billion a year for the rest of this Parliament.
No, it's $8 billion to deliver over the period.
But you've already done that with the $2 billion, surely.
No, that's the first down payment of it.
Yeah, I know, but if it's $2 billion a year, you've already done it. This is not $8 billion extra.
It is $8 billion extra over the growth each year.
Okay.
Of course it is.
Jeff, what do you say to that?
Well, I'm not entirely convinced that the calculator's switched on. I mean, at the end of the day, I've heard nothing to convince me that it's not going to go up and the country isn't going to get into a worse state. One thing I will say is that I constantly hear politicians, non-UKIP, saying that UKIP are a one-trick pony. One thing that I like about that, about political party is they are prepared to address things that are right that people are too afraid to go near.
Well, like what?
The fact of the matter is that when you have non-skilled people in this country who are struggling to get work, someone is paying for them to live. Now, don't get me wrong, the British people are amazingly benevolent. We give vast amount of money to charity all the time.
Yeah. All right. Well, look, Jeff says he's never voted.
Just be clear, because I want to clear. In terms of what we're talking about here, we're talking about a financial year, right? So each year, over the last 5 years, we've put in £7.3 billion, and we will put in above that. We're talking about delivering each year an £8 billion, and it's not very different in terms of what we've been able to deliver. It is very different from what the situation is in Wales, where they've seen a real terms cut.
OK, let's move on. Let's go to Graham, who's in Paynton. Hello, Graham. I bet it's sunny down there.
Yes, it is. It's a beautiful day today. Yeah.
Right, what's your question for Eric?
Yeah, I'm a working man, and all that bothers me really is the Conservatives and the Coalition. I say they're all for the working man, but the Coalition introduced fees for employment tribunals, and most of us in Devon and Cornwall are on a minimum wage down here. How can we afford that, and why did they do that?
Well, we just had difficulty in terms of finding savings. We had an enormous deficit. We had to find various ways of reducing it. I'm responsible for a quarter of public expenditure. The amount of money that went to local authorities had to go down. The amount of growth that there was with regard to the legal profession continued to grow. So we had to do those things.
Wasn't it also?
And also, tribunals aren't supposed to really be about having lawyered up. They're there to receive justice without necessary for courts.
I do realise that, but I do understand it's about £1,000 now. It's money for anybody to.
What, £1,000 to go to an employment tribunal?
Yes, I believe it is. Yes.
You don't sound very sure.
Well, I think it's about 200 for the application, and then there's another fee after that.
I mean, hasn't Graham got a point here in that part of the objective here wasn't just to save money, it was that too many people were going to employment tribunals and you were under pressure from employers to take this action because they were fed up with the amount of time and money they were having to spend on tribunals?
There had been an enormous growth, of course, in the amount of litigation that was taking place, and we're spending a lot of time putting a lot of money into lawyers' pockets.
You can watch us at lbc.co.uk. Do give us a call as well if you'd like to talk to Eric Pickles. He's here till 6:30. 0345 6060 973. Graham, thank you for your call. Let's go to Mark, who's in Notting Hill. Hello, Mark.
Hello.
What's your question?
I was wondering, are the Tories in discussions with UKIP to form a coalition?
No.
And is there anybody you would definitely never go into coalition with, or would you be prepared to speak to anybody?
I don't think we'll go into a coalition with the Scottish National Party or the Greens. Or the Greens.
Oh, okay.
I don't think it's likely we'll go into coalition with the Labour Party.
What did you make of Nigel?
That only leaves the UKIP and the Liberal Democrats and the Unionists, then, doesn't it? Really?
Well, I can't rule everybody out, and I've just ruled UKIP out. But you asked us if we were in discussions. No, we're in the process of trying to win this election.
I was wondering when that line was coming, Eric, because that's always the one that's trotted out, well, we're going to win a majority, but you didn't put that at the front of your answer there.
Well, because I'm a very straight guy. He asked me if we were in negotiations. The answer is no.
What did you make of Nigel Farage's comment earlier, late last week, I think, when he said that in constituencies where UKIP doesn't stand a chance, voters should effectively vote Conservative? Do you welcome support from Mr Farage in that way?
He's entitled to his view, and to tell you the truth, if I was Mr Farage, I would vote Conservative, because I think in Thailand there's a better candidate there.
OK. Let's go to Ranjit, who's in Birmingham. Hello, Ranjit.
Hello, Ian.
Hi, what's your question?
Do you intend to continue unfair funding for pupils in schools, whereby some pupils get about £6,000 per pupil spent, and other neighbouring authorities get £4,000, and basically you're using proxies for worklessness to give more money to schools where there's a large amount of worklessness, and thereby not rewarding areas where there's high amounts of people in work, and disadvantaging their children.
Well, we do have this thing called the pupil premium, and what we decided to do was to put it into areas that were falling behind with regard to employment, that there were social problems within that area, and I don't think it's unreasonable to fund areas that are poorer than the more affluent that many Conservatives represent, and I think that's a demonstration that we want to operate as a whole community.
Ranjit, what effect is it having in your community?
Well, not necessarily my community. My partner's children are in Solihull, and in Birmingham they get I think almost £2,000 per pupil, more per child, and so it's not, obviously there's no border or such. There's only a sort of line, and either side of the border can have £4,000 spent on it.
Okay.
Where people are equally poor, or but not equally poor, but I don't think it's fair that where people are doing the right thing, their pupils are in effect disadvantaged by so much, a few £100 maybe, but not so much.
It's a fair point, Eric, isn't it?
It is a fair point, but when you're faced with difficult choices, even at a time when funds were having to go down, you want to try and protect the most vulnerable. I don't think that's an unreasonable thing to do. Now, if you're an adjoining authority and you obviously don't have as much unemployment, you don't have as much deprivation, and you don't get that money, I can understand you're going to feel a little aggrieved, because it is based on the pupil.
Now, of course, the pupil premium is a Lib Dem policy. They're taking complete credit for that. I don't know if you've heard Nick Clegg's comments today about forming another coalition. He said that the Lib Dems would add a heart to a Conservative government and a brain to a Labour government.
Well, I think.
What do you think the Lib Dems add?
I think I will bring bottom to any government. Well, you see, the thing is, with the Liberal Democrats, we took a lot of difficult decisions, and I'm proud about what we're doing, and I'm proud to stand by that. I think sometimes with the Liberal Democrats, they took those very difficult decisions and want to forget that they were actually part of taking those difficult decisions. So, we took some pretty difficult times with the Liberal Democrats, and they were completely with us and all that. And I do not recall a suggestion, oh no, don't do that. That's far too difficult. No, we took some hard decisions, and I'm proud to have stood with them.
Harriet Harman says they're the appendix of a Conservative government.
Well, she uses a sort of anatomical term that I don't recognise.
OK. Let's go to George in Dartford. George, hello.
Hi, it's George here. A question for Eric Pickles.
Go ahead.
Eric, can you tell me why no politician is looking at tackling this unaccounted amount we spend on foreign aid when you're looking to make savings?
Well, UKIP, of course, have announced today that they would cut £9 billion from the foreign aid budget, something which may get them quite a lot of votes, Eric.
Sure. It's one of the things I'm actually quite proud of. And we are a large trading nation. Britain's reach goes way into the world. And I have to say this, if it wasn't for the foreign aid, but I suspect right now on this programme, we'd be talking about Ebola and the way it was raging through Africa, and the way it was kind of, terrible metaphor, but kind of lapping at our store. We were able to deal with that pretty effective because we were on the ground there, and we were spending serious money, and we were able to kind of react. And we aren't an island unto ourselves. We do what happens in the rest of the world, what happens in Somalia, what happens in Nigeria, what happens throughout Asia affects our economy and the people that live here. And it's not an unreasonable sum.
But when I said earlier that I thought there were Conservatives who thought that UKIP was effectively a modern-day Conservative party, this is a good issue, isn't it? Because people say, well, you're quite happy to spend all this money on international aid, but you won't spend 2% of GDP on defence, and you call yourself a Conservative
party. Just hold on. We're saying that we will pay for all four of the nuclear subs. We are guaranteeing in terms of the equipment. We're guaranteeing that we'll pay 1% above inflation, and we will deal with the defence in the same way we've done this, which is in the defence review, which will be taking place, and it'll be all out there in the open.
But what does it say about a Prime Minister who at a NATO summit publicly commits to 2% of GDP and then a matter of months later ditches it as a commitment?
We are not ditching anything. We're just going about
it. Not in the manifesto.
And we're simply going about it in a proper and reasoned way. We're making clear that we'll ensure that we'll support the renewal of our nuclear deterrent with 4 subs. We're saying we're going to be that we will ensure that the equipment that the armed forces receive will increase, will go up in real terms, and we're committed to ensuring that our armed forces will not be reduced above their current level. That's a pretty solid commitment.
George?
No, about the Ebola, that's just a spurious argument, Eric, because
so what's
Ebola only happened last year. We've been spending for years and years unaccountable sums to these third world countries, which isn't really going where the money should be. None of this money is audited at all. Why can't it be on a merit basis rather than the lunacy of allocating a percentage, committing to a percentage of GDP to it.
No, it all goes to specific projects, and as you know, Ian, our accounts are audited, and the money that the UK gives has been regarded as being actually quite effective. It has gone to eradicate poverty. It hasn't been siphoned off. Obviously, fraud does occur, but by and large, it's been quite well targeted.
Let's take a text from Julie, who's in Suffolk. Could Mr Pickles please show some real compassion by telling us what benefits the Tories will cut? My lovely son is severely disabled with a life-threatening condition. We're very fearful about the future. Will they protect ESA, DLA and the carers allowance?
Well, let's be clear. We've gone about this process very, very straightforward, and we've always protected the most vulnerable, and we've always protected our pensioners. What we have done is to reduce the level of benefits. We say we are going to freeze in work benefits, but it should always pay to work. But those who, but just a second.
Sure, no,
but those who can't work, of course, they're going to be protected.
Well, so you can commit now to protecting ESA, DLA, and the carers allowance. They won't be part of the £12 billion cuts that Ian Duncan-Smith needs to make.
But of course, we are moving on various benefits. But what I can't be held up with regard to a name. But in terms of ensuring that lady and her child are looked after, then yes, I give that guarantee.
Because this goes to the root of what I said at the beginning about funding election promises, because I've had 5 or 6 Conservative ministers sit exactly where you're sitting now, and not a single one of them has been able to tell me where these £12 billion of welfare cuts are going to come from. The Chancellor couldn't tell me. Michael Gove couldn't tell me. How can you go into an election and not actually give the detail of where these cuts are going to fall?
Well, they will occur throughout a normal review. We've put down some very clear markers in terms of how they will be done. The first one, just a second, I'll tell you.
Go on.
The first one is obviously that we will protect the most vulnerable, as I've just said. We will ensure that pensioners are protected, and we will ensure that work pays. Now, we have got more people back into work than previous governments.
But to come up with this figure of £12 billion, you must be able to identify where those cuts are going to fall.
500,000 people in work more in London right now than there were in the beginning of 2010. And as we get more people into work, then we get more people off benefit, and therefore we're able to protect the most vulnerable.
Well, I think all we're asking for is a breakdown of where the £12 billion is going to come from. I don't think that's unreasonable for people to want to know in an election campaign.
Well, I don't think it's unreasonable. We've delivered a very clear fiscal breakdown for each of the years, which is more than any of the political parties have done so far. So I think we've gone a lot further than the other political parties.
OK, let's go to another call. By the way, you can watch us, lbc.co.uk. Brett is in Marylebone. Hello, Brett.
Hi.
Hello, what would you
my
like
question
to
to Mr Pickles is, you called UKIP essentially a one-trick pony. I'd just like to ask you if you've had a chance to read the UKIP manifesto today.
I fortunately wasn't at the sort of Fawlty Towers
It was actually
launch.
near your constituency, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, yeah, but I was on my way here to see you good folks. But I'll read it with enormous interest. I have relied on the local paper to tell us what's been happening.
OK, so what do you make of what you've read in the Evening Standard?
Well, the problem with UKIP, and I don't mean this at all rudely, is their policies change.
Well, so do yours.
But they change on the basis of daily. No one can accuse the Conservative Party of changing their policies daily, which they certainly have done. Even today, in terms of there's going to be an Australian system for skilled workers. Well, does that mean unskilled workers are coming? Yes, it does now.
Well, if I went out into Leicester Square and said to a random selection of people, can you tell me 2 things that UKIP stand for? I suspect most people could. They could say they want to come out of Europe and they want to restrict immigration. If I said to them, what does the modern-day Conservative Party stand for? I wonder how many people could actually come up with 2 things that they could say, yeah, those are definitely Conservative policies.
Well, what they would say is that the Conservative Party have got a long-term economic plan that ensures that people from the very big...
29 minutes in, and that's the first time you've mentioned that. Grant Shapps won't be pleased.
Well, I think he'd be very pleased I'm here. a long-term... that's the first thing they would say. And then the second thing they would say is that the Conservative Party brought the economy back from the brink.
OK. Brett, what's your response?
With all due respect, you said you haven't read the manifesto, so I just wonder how you can come to the conclusion that UKIP are a one-trick pony.
I rely on the newspapers, and I've got complete faith.
Right, Judy, you are our final caller in this half hour. Judy's in Belsize Park. What would you like to ask?
Yes, you've been talking about the possibility of who you may or may not form a coalition with. Could I have the temerity to ask why the electorate aren't allowed to have a say in who forms a coalition with who? My suggestion would be that, as well as the normal ballot paper that we have when we go to the polling station, we have a second paper that has the various combinations of the most likely coalitions that could be formed. And before you say the paper would be 3 feet long, did you see the length of the paper for the European elections?
Well, the thing is, on the 7th of May, you will have a choice. You'll have a choice, but
you will have a choice as to a coalition.
You will have a choice of a Conservative government with a very clear commitment on an economic plan, or a choice of chaos. And the great thing is that you can form that coalition. A vote for UKIP, a vote for the Labour Party is going to ensure that this country is almost certainly going to be controlled by the Labour Party and the Scottish Nationalists. So you can actually do that in the ballot box by simply not voting Conservative.
When you get those lines from CCHQ, do you practice them in front of the mirror just so they sound convincing?
Well, I'm convinced by it.
But trotting out this long-term economic plan, the hard-working people, all the stuff about Alex Salmond and...
But it is true, isn't it? I mean, we were at the brink.
But why not come up with something original to say?
In this studio 5 years ago, we were in such a terrible state. We had the largest deficit in Europe. We were in a real economic problem. We could find ourselves facing large interest rates. We were pictures across the continent of people writing over austerity. That could have been us. And do not mock the fact that we have brought back this country from that place, and do not mock that we have put in 7.3 billion pounds a year extra into the health service to keep it going, and that is some achievement, and that's what we'll continue to do, and do it, I think, with some considerable success.
I thought you were coming over all Frankie Howard then. Mock ye not. But Eric, thank you very much indeed. That's Eric Pickles, the Local Government and Communities Secretary for the Conservative Party. Coming up later in the week on LBC's election call. So far this week, we've had Neil Hamilton from UKIP. Nick Clegg will be with Nick Ferrari tomorrow morning. And a leading, that's for 9 o'clock, a leading Labour Party politician joins me on Friday. Don't forget, if you miss anything, you can get all of this and more from LBC's podcast service. You can get full details of this at lbc.co.uk. I'm Ian Dale at Drive, LBC News Time. It's 6:32.